Is the work session of the Silver Consolidated School District Board of Education. It is Monday, August 20th, 2018, and the time is 5:31. Mrs. Hernandez, could you perform a roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. McMillan?
Here.
Mrs. Montenegro?
Here.
Mr. Khan?
Here.
Dr. Diaz?
Here.
Mr. Flores?
Here.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to our work session this evening. Mr. Clough has an update to the Silver Consolidated Schools Athletic Activity Handbook, and that's what we've got as the sole item on our work session agenda this evening. Appreciate you all being here, and members of administration, thank you for being here. Mr. Clough, I'll turn it over to you if you're ready.
Okay, thank you, President. Okay, I released to the board on Friday the upcoming timeline of events and some things we need to consider before going into the process. Since the last board meeting, I've been working with Victor Oaka as well as Gary Allison, the athletic director coach out at Cliff, on our process of how we're going to proceed forward to get input on the handbook. And I think there's a couple key issues we need to bring up tonight because they seem to be popping up with questions and like that. The first one is came up last week at the parent meeting, the role of board members in the process. You're more than welcome to be part of it as part of this, but we also got to be leery of public meeting law. Since each one of you has kids involved in those processes, we just have to make sure we do not have more than 3. Otherwise, it'd be a public meeting. We have to follow public meeting laws and procedures. So you have every right to participate as a parent, as a board member. And we have talked as an administrative team about trying to make sure to transparency the process and make sure the parents have as much input in this as we can get on the issues that was brought up, which we'll talk about in the next section. So I just want to make sure that if we're going to have board involvement, that we try to keep the same 2 members. So we might want to have a little bit discussion on which 2 would like to be on the committee as we proceed forward, so that way I can make sure I know who I'm updating and that I can relay it back to the other board members as we work through there. So we can open that up to discussion right now.
Any board members want to participate as a parent on the committee?
I would be happy to.
Dr. Diaz, got one. Any other board members or any discussion regarding participation on the committee?
The committee meetings, more or less, and I don't even know if you would have a estimated time of meeting. Would it be in the afternoons?
We're looking at 6 o'clock at nights because a lot of our parents are working based on what I've got input from Cliff, and a lot of them travel time in as well. So we're looking right now, the introductory one for organizational and setting up the meeting times is this Wednesday, and that seemed to be a good point with everybody when we brought it up. The first meeting we're going to have is just basically an organizational meeting so we can set up the structure of meetings, whether we need 2, 3, whatever. We want to make sure that we give our due diligence to the process and not just rush through it and make sure we're addressing concerns and those types of things. So this Wednesday we will set it up, but we're looking at evenings because that seemed to be the consensus of the administration and the parents to make sure that they are available.
And I guess I would add, it's not required that we have 2 or
Yeah,
even
it's
1
not
or
required.
none, but just if there was interest there, as Mr. Clough had mentioned, many of us have either had children or currently have children that are involved in activities and involved in the school, so it can also be a parent.
I did have a question.
Yes.
So when we were talking at the parent meeting,
Yeah.
to me it was a question of when we have parent involvement. I know there are dual roles for a lot of
Yeah.
people, but the other question I had was, I know we don't want to involve so many people that we can't ever make
Yeah.
a decision, but then we want to have kind of a good representation of
Yeah.
varied opinions for parents.
Here's what we've done. I was going to cover this when we go into the consideration of the working group. Right now we have 4 parents that have agreed to be part of this. Amy Sherman from Cliff, Victoria Sierra from Silver, Kimberly Berrigan from SHS, Furman and Tanya Lopez from HHS, and I was waiting for Mr. Alvarez to confirm. He had 2 parents that were interested, but he was unable to confirm as of today for those. And then we also asked 3 other community members to be part of this. AJ Sandoval from the Youth Substance Abuse Task Force to be on here because they're working on some county-wide policies and want to hear what they're doing, so we make this as a community effort. Asked Chief Portillo or him to send a designee to the committee, and we also asked our attendance and truancy officer, David Holguin, to be on there because each one of them deal with situations in different ways, dealing with the athletic code and like that, and they could be there. And then the district representation is Victor, myself, and Gary Allison from Cliff, so that way we have equal representation. And then Dr. Diaz volunteered as the parent/board member to be there as an advisory. So we've tried to keep the group small, but we also want to get a cross-representation of the community because I attended the Drug and Alcohol Task Force meeting in early August, and they are looking at trying to do some consolidated efforts, and there may be some resources that we have access to that they cannot divulge to us right now. When it comes to helping students and being able to give them alternative means or allow them to come in and do alternative means of counseling beforehand. So that's why I think it was important that we had AJ Sandoval involved in this process and looking at it so we can really get the community-wide perspective on it. So I think we've got a good representation. It's not too big, but yet I think it's a good enough working group and a cross-representation of the community that we can get some really good input. And nothing says that we can't call in future people. We see that we have other people interested or like that. This is just the start of the group. So I'm like you, Dr. Diaz, I do not want to grow too big, but I also want to make sure we get a good cross-representation so we make sure we get the input from all the areas that we need.
Mr. Cliff, I think that sounds like a good amount of folks and an appropriate kind of different folks from different areas of the community and potential resources as well.
Mm-hmm.
Other comments from the board?
So you're looking for 2 school board members?
If you want to, you don't have to. It was just that we can't exceed 2 because of public meeting law. And I'm fine with that, and that was actually a point we might as well talk about. How's the communication going to come out of this? If Dr. Diaz and I could do some summaries of what's occurring, I'm more than happy to work with her, or if there's 2 board members, to make sure that we're getting the information out to you as this grows, because I'm sure we want to hear the community input. But yet there's going to be some issues that you may need to do your homework on when we come to vote to the final policies, that you understand what the root of our decisions are being made in. So as we go forward, Victor actually I inherited the handbook that Victor worked on so hard last year and tried to convert it to the district one. And Victor's got a lot of insight of what he did last year. That's why I wanted him on the committee with what was going on, and we're trying to consolidate this to make this consistent for both Cliff and here. So that way we have some consistency of enforcement and address those issues. So however you guys want to communicate it out, I'm more than happy to work with Dr. Diaz to report it out, do the reports. No need, if you don't feel there's a need to have 2 board members on there, and you can let Dr. Diaz and I work with those communication structures and get the information out to you guys in a timely manner, because, like example, drug testing was one of the issues we talked about last month. The cost analysis and like that, you guys really need to understand as we go through this. The discussion of the rehabilitation versus penalty phases, how are we going to deal with that, and some of the other sample policies that I did after examining other policies across the country and in the state. That was the last document that I gave you of some potential policies to consider for the handbook and parents. These are some recommendations that were made by the National Athletic Directors Association to consider. I used some of my former ties, being a former AD, talking to a couple of my buddies from across the country of some things that they said that have popped up that we may be lacking in our handbook. We may not need it because of what we already have in the student handbook that we use. But these are all points of discussion so we can get the dialogue going and understand that we're trying to do this in the best interest of kids and make sure that we align to what the district expectations are for academics and athletics and activities for our district.
I'll go and look at my availability and then just go ahead and count me in, but I'll have to separate Michelle and I. I'm just joking.
Oh.
No, I was actually.
I'll be the referee in between.
I was actually going to say, I mean, I clearly had varying views from other people like Patrick over here, so I think it's good to have the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have any students participating in athletics, so it'll be good to have that that other side of just a parent view, non-partisan.
And the other thing I tried to give the board is this is a timeline, and I gave you the agenda of the first meeting to show the purpose of the first meeting so we can get it organized. Because I do not expect the committee to be able to debate these and discuss these conversations in the first meeting. We might just hand them the material. So I want to make sure they get the material in advance. I'm going to try to email it out to all the people if I get their email addresses before then, and then just tell them what we're looking at and then set up our priorities as a group. And then the timeline that I gave you was based on what I said last month, trying to get it to you guys by October. If we get to the first meeting, all of a sudden we have these great discussions and everything falls in September, this is a flexible timeline. If we run into situations where we may need to go longer, we'll keep the board advised. But I'd much rather make sure our process is thorough and efficient and we're addressing all the needs instead of us all of a sudden thinking, oh, we should have thought of that. And make sure that we have this as a most comprehensive review of our handbooks and make sure we're aligned with the district expectations are for our student athletes and people participating in activities. There's one issue that came up that Mr. Coker had asked me about, and Victor and I have it on our radar, is there are some of our clubs that are actually for credit. So how are we going to deal competition versus academics? Because we are not allowed to impact a student's ability to earn a grade through that, but how do we deal with that type of situation? So that's a dialogue we need to have as a committee, because like marching band going to competition, our marching band, that is part of their grade. So how do we deal with that as a district when it impacts our grade? What alternative means of discipline are we able to use? Does that fall underneath the athletic and activities handbook, or do we go and enforce it in the student handbook? Because that is a class, they are representing the school. So those are things that we need to discuss more thoroughly so we make sure we're not impacting the kid's ability to earn credit or a grade.
Where will the meeting take place on Wednesday?
It is here in the boardroom. We'll have all of them here, and we'll try to set the schedule up, and I'll get it out to you, Mr. Cohn and Dr. Diaz, so that way you guys can put it on your agendas, because I know we're all busy. So make sure we can do that, and I want to make sure we get as many parents there. We actually have a set of parents that are committed that can't make it on Wednesday night, but want to stay there. The time is just a conflict for this Wednesday for something they had arranged, but they'll be there for the future meetings. I'm going to make sure they get all that information in advance.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on the materials I presented to you for consideration?
No, and thank you for getting out ahead of time for this one.
I try to do it because I know it was what our Monday was like today, dealing with things that pop up. I'm going to do it, and I'll do the same thing with the agendas on that. I try to get them out at least 72 hours in advance with the committee meetings and those types of things. And if there's topics and organizations and those types of things, and I really want to get this structured so we can address what was discussed last month of the board. What's the priorities and what we need to do and have addressed and go from there.
Mr. President, my only comment is I value Michelle and Patrick's presence on the board because they're going to come back with good information, but I would just hope that we make a decision and move forward and approve the handbook and not create maybe a subcommittee to the committee and then sort of drag this out further, because in all reality, it's a handbook. Let's just put it out to the parents, either way, whatever way you guys choose, whether there is random drug testing, whether there isn't. Either way, move forward with it and put it behind us, and we'll move on to something else. I just hope it comes out we have a handbook out by October.
Yeah, that's the goal. Is October approval. If it's sooner, we'll get it to you.
Yeah.
I'm hoping, I think there's enough of a consensus talking to some of the people that have been involved in this process that we might be able to expedite it faster with the meetings, because they may be willing to meet more often as opposed to every 2 weeks.
Thank you.
I appreciate that, Mr. Flores, Mr. Clough as well. This information is, getting this kind of outline and prepared for everybody so you can hit the ground running, and there's kind of a somewhat set guideline of how you expect to move forward. One of the areas in the examples that you had presented that I hadn't considered before, but I do see as a potential issue, is students that are involved in multiple activities.
Yeah.
And those activities conflicting with each other. And I've seen it over the last couple of years. I think sometimes those students will, well, I don't feel like doing this today, so I'm going
Yeah.
to tell them I'm going to do this instead, and they play the activities against each other, and I think that's detrimental to both programs, and so that was an issue that was part of your examples here, and so I appreciate that information that you've put together.
And Victor, can you refresh my memory on NMA? I had it one time with an athlete last year, a kid participating in 2 sports in the same season. They have to declare a primary, or is that up to the school district by NMAA? Yeah.
We don't necessarily have 2 sports going on. I'm not saying that cheer is not a sport.
Yeah.
But that's usually what the conference is in the fall. Cheerleader, advanced team, and participating in volleyball or soccer. So what we've done in the past is if a young lady or even a young man is jumping in football, we say, okay, your primary sport is the fall sport. After your fall season, now cheer becomes, your dance becomes your focus, focus sport, because now you're heading into your competition season.
And also when you have an activity, let's say marching band contest conflicts with an athletic contest, the grade should take precedent over the athletic contest regardless of what the coach says, so that way it doesn't impact the kid's grade. Unless there is a provision in there they can give an alternative assignment to, but if you're losing your first tuba in the state competition, I don't think the band director will be too happy. So.
Which is, I guess, interesting in our
Yeah.
situation too, because there is a sports lab grade
Yeah,
that is probably separate from the activity itself, and there's the same on band, but maybe
Yeah.
band can, the participation is part of the grade, I guess. is
Is
what
there
I'm-
any other activities you can think of that we have a grade connected to it, Victor?
No, so I don't think you have to pay
No.
to it. There could be for heat club,
Yeah,
because you have to do so many hours of community service.
yeah,
Um,
and some of those events will conflict with,
I mean, you're presenting and go around and out. For
Yeah.
example, a kid who's ineligible, academically, should participate.
Yeah.
In a marching band or a concert band or FFA, because that's
Yeah.
that's as far as eligible. If they don't have grades, they're not eligible if it
Yeah.
is participation rate.
Other comments, questions from the board?
I'm sure we know what we're talking about Wednesday. That's why you're here.
Administration, any other?
That's it,
Comments?
just any comments? I mean, I'll work with Patrick and Michelle on the schedule, and make sure we can get that ironed out, and work with the communication with them so we can get it out to you in a timely manner after the meetings. Because I know after those meetings on Thursday and Friday, it could get hectic. I just want to make sure we get it out as soon as possible afterwards, so it's fresh in all of our minds, so you guys are aware of what's going on.
Very well, thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes everything we have for our work session this evening. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so moved.
Got a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll adjourn until 6. Thank you all.